For this YouTube video, this one is just, even though I am recording this on TikTok, this video is for YouTube. Today, this is just for a little talk about how I became alternative, how I became the way that I am, how my interests came to be. Just basically talking about how, I got to this point, because I wasn't always like this. Like I said in the previous video, I had to discover who I really was before I actually, could be who I really am. Before we get into all of that though, I do want to show my fit, show what I put together. This is just what I put together, just a slight little vest that I put on, of course, my jewelry and everything, silver necklace, silver bracelets and everything, silver chain to complement the belt that I got. Even though I got a studded belt, I wanted a little bit more, character, or a little bit more of an accessory. So I connected this with the belt loop and everything. Just some platform shoes, ain't too much, something slight, something I can walk around the house in. But now to get to the video, really how this all started, I've only been alternative, so to speak. I don't really like the label or whatever, but I've only been alternative for maybe since the beginning of last year, really. Like, I've always been this way. I've always been alternative, into dark aesthetics and everything. I've always been into darker aspects of things, but I never really could express certain things because of the family that I grew up in, because of the people that I was around in school and all of that. I didn't really start getting into fashion or getting into dressing the way that I dress now until like the beginning of last year. Like, granted, I'm 29 years old. Keep in mind that I'm 29 years old and I'm just now, coming into this. Shout out to the people who could be themselves when they was in high school, middle school, elementary school, but I couldn't do that. Not only did I get talked about or get bothered, at school or whatever, I got, a little bit of, in black households, we joke around with each other and everything like that, but I don't think we really understand the type of toll that it takes on, the child growing up in that black household. So especially if, it feels like the whole entire family is just going against that one child, or, talking about that one child. And that was me. So I was always the one getting in trouble. I was always the odd one out. I was always the one being talked about and picked on, whether it was at home or at school. So as I gotten older, you just get used to it, you expect it, and like I said, family members don't really think about what they're doing. They don't really take it that seriously, because they don't really understand that it is causing emotional damage and mental damage on that child, because they might have grew up dealing with the same thing, whatever the case may be. But not everybody's the same. Whether you grew up in the same household or not, you're not going to experience things the same. And I don't think that most black households understand that. But that's a whole nother video. To stay on topic, so I wasn't always like this. Like I said, I just now came into this. I am 29 years old, but I grew up watching Blade. I grew up watching Blade 1, 2, and 3 over and over again. I grew up watching Underworld 1, 2, and 3 over and over again. I grew up watching things like that, Beetlejuice, The Addams Family. Like, I grew up watching horror movies with my family. Side note, to anybody who like Jeepers Creepers, bro, I fucking hate you for real, because my granddaddy showed me that movie when I was like 5 years old, and that's the only horror movie I'm scared of. To this day, no horror movie really scares me or whatever, but that one, Jeepers Creepers really do fuck with me. I don't know why. I really don't. To this day, I don't even like to hear the fucking song. But I grew up watching horror movies. I grew up watching, things like that. I grew up watching action movies and dark aesthetics at a very early age. So, like I said, I was watching that shit when I was like 10 and under, like kindergarten. We was watching Blade and shit like that. Like, it was normal in the household or whatever, in the black household, especially with my uncles. Like, they made sure to show us movies like that. So, watching those movies did did have an impact on me. And I always, I was the one that was praying at the time, praying to be bit by a vampire, praying to be turned into a werewolf, shit like that. Like I was the weird little boy or whatever, going around saying that I was a werewolf and a vampire, all that, biting myself, drinking my own blood, all types of shit. But it was shit that I was doing that let me know how I got here. Basically, it'll. I'm not gonna go into everything, but it let me know how I got here. Like, but I've always been this way. I've always been, I don't like to call it goth because of the I don't feel like getting into it with the internet about the whole political shit about being goth or whatever. But I was always into the dark aesthetic, wearing black all the time and things. I just could never express it. Going fast forward to middle school and high school, I used to take my brother's clothes because he was more of the fashion, more of the person who could dress or whatever, and it was more so what they call dope boy fresh or whatever. He always was up on the Jordans. He always was up on the latest fashion and everything as far as what was popular around that time, the trends that were popular around that time. But I didn't really care about it. I just cared about it to the sense of I want to get that stuff and wear that stuff that's in trends and in fashion, in the time that it was, just to not be talked about, just not be bothered by people. Because people used to talk shit about me. People used to talk about my clothes. I used to go to school wearing the same shit all the time. Every week I had the same outfits on and all that. And eventually I started getting talked about and called out for it. So I started taking my little brother's clothes and shit and wearing his shit, wearing his shoes, wearing his shirts and pants and everything. Even though I would get stuff or whatever, it wasn't like we was poor. We didn't grow up poor, nothing like that. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you like that. My story didn't go like that. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. It was more so, I would say, middle class or whatever however you want to call it. My dad's side is a whole different story, but just like everybody in a black household, most of the time when you got a split household or whatever, and your mom and your dad not together, your dad's side usually the hood side, and that was the case with my dad's side. Like my dad's side is the hood side, so it wasn't like I wasn't experiencing it, but I just wasn't experiencing it very often or whatever. I only experienced it whenever I would go visit my father and go on that side of the family or whatever. But we didn't grow up too bad, so we would every school year we would get clothes. We would have certain things, have a certain budget given to us, and then we would go get clothes. And I would just go get shit that just to get shit. But then I started getting things that I know people would like at school just so I wouldn't get talked about. And I did that all throughout, I want to say, the beginning of high school to probably the end of high school, really. Like, I graduated in 2016, so that was around the time where, certain styles and certain trends were in place. But I grew up in the beginning of high school wearing like Hollister and Abercrombie and Fitch and Aeropostale. That was when that shit was popular. Like, so I never really liked that shit for real. I didn't give a fuck about no Jordans, nothing like that. I was never a sneakerhead. I didn't care about none of that shit. I cared about, just trying to get through the day, not be bothered and shit. So that kind of stopped once I started fighting motherfuckers back. That stopped once I realized that, I could beat niggas' asses and not worry about being talked about or bothered, at least to my face. So once I started fighting motherfuckers and shit, that shit stopped, and I started not caring about clothes and shit, and just started building this reputation of fear and everything. But fast forward, going throughout life after high school, it was just, I'm still trying to find my way, still trying to figure out things, still trying to figure out what I like and who I am. So I'm still dressing a certain way out of high school, the same way I was dressing in high school, but eventually it started to stop once I started realizing, okay, I'm doing this for other people. I'm holding this aesthetic for other people. It was all the way down to the way that I would cut my hair and what I would do, all types of shit. Like, it was just for everybody, and I was living for the image to please everybody and to get